Afternoon in Europe. Good morning to those of you who follow us from the Americas. My name is Andres Rodrigo, and I'd like to welcome you to this Inclusive Sustainable Digital Justice. We will be broadcasting through a YouTube channel in Spanish, English, and Portuguese. Without any further ado, I would like to introduce the Director General of Casa de América, Mr. Escobar Rubias.
Buenas tardes, bienvenidas, bienvenidos a Casa de América.
Welcome everyone to Casa de América. Minister, thank you very much for being here today. Once again, you're showing your commitment towards to inclusive justice. Thank you to the Inter-American Development Bank and everyone here today. They're a key partner for most of the points in our agenda, and of course also in the field of justice, in an open, equitable justice. Thank you so much, and welcome to the Casa de América, mainly to all our Latin American colleagues who are here today and who are representing the justice system in different countries in the world, both at federal level, at national level, and at state level. With this brief meeting, we're coming back to some of the topics that were discussed in a previous conversation in Casa de América with the Inter-American Development Bank around justice and gender equality. With these sessions today, we are going to widen our horizons, and we will be looking at issues that have to do with higher efficiency and sustainability. The challenges that our justice systems have to face are wide. There are many aspects you're already familiar with, and generally speaking, they have to do with specific topics, such as, for example, the reduction of the proceedings in terms of time, or guaranteeing access to justice for all sectors, including people from the most disadvantaged groups. And this includes as well special attention to women with a clear gender approach. We think in Casa de América that it is important for us to discuss these topics. Casa de América is very happy to be a meeting point for this discussion around these very relevant topics. And one of the aspects that will be discussed today is digitization. Apart from reducing the time frame of proceedings, it also has an important impact in terms of improving transparency and indirectly increasing trust from citizens into the justice systems. And this is a topic we are concerned about in Casa de América, and we're trying to bring together different actors and stakeholders because we are concerned with the crisis of institutions, of the image of institutions in the continent and elsewhere in the world. We think that we have to give citizens reasons to trust institutions and to assess democracy as such. And digitization is an element that might help us in this. Without any further ado, I think I've mentioned the most important topics. Thank you very much. And I hope that this meeting is successful, this meeting that brings together people from different countries and from different areas, of course, in the field of justice, all of us. But as I have mentioned, we have a Brazilian delegation. It's a huge countries, and we have representatives from the federal level, the states, etc. So I think that this is a very interesting debate that we will have with people from different institutions to see what kinds of problems they have to face. And after this discussion, I'm sure that we will find a roadmap to share and to cooperate around. And I'm sure that we will have a wider space and productive space in the Latin American area. Much, Luis, for your welcome. We will now see the video of Mr. Benigno López Benítez.
Doña María Pilar Llop.
Madam María Pilar Llop Cuenca, Minister of Justice in Spain, judges, authorities of the judiciary system in Latin America and in Spain, the director of Casa America authorities. The legal system is key in our attempts to improve the economic situation of Latin America and the Caribbean. We have many gaps in our systems. According to our studies, legal proceedings takes on average over 600 days. And whenever we ask citizens in the region about their most important barriers in terms of accessing justice, they mention the red tape and time, and these are mentioned as the most important obstacles. The impact of the COVID-19 pandemic has also further limited the way our legal system operates, and it has had an impact on the execution, the exercise of fundamental rights such as access to justice. This has pushed many tribunals to adopt technological solutions so that the system is not paralyzed. IT, hand in hand with the professionalization of our staff, are proving to be the solution. Today, we're lucky enough to have a committed partner, committed with the transformation of the public service, with also proven experience and expertise in the transformation of justice. I'd like to thank the support of the Spanish Ministry of Justice. A year ago, we signed an agreement with them, a cooperation agreement for this field. And as an outcome of this product, we have a group of countries coming together today. They are committed with this transition in justice. We're working in Panama, Colombia, Brazil, and Jamaica, and we have the mission of expanding this experience to other countries in the region as well. This mission is an important opportunity for the region to learn in situ and to see how courthouses and the legal system work, and from experts in this sector. Thanks to this exchange with Spain, our region will strengthen their mechanisms to accelerate the digital transition in justice. If we work together and if we share our experiences, we will have the lessons from the pandemic, can generate more modern systems and more accessible systems, focusing on the improvement of the lives of citizens. Thank you.
A continuación, invito a la ministra de...
I'd like to invite the Minister of Justice of Spain, Madam Pilar Llop Cuenca, to welcome you.
Director
General of Digital Transformation, Aitor Kubalma, of a technological project in the Ministry of Justice, as all of you are already aware of, the Director of Casa America, Luis Prados, the President of the High Court of Jamaica, Mr. Brian Sykes, the Prosecutor of the State of Bolivia, Mr. Chavez, Mr. Fabio Clem from Brazil, Vice President of the Court of Justice of the State of Pernambuco in Brazil, Antonio Cardoso, Supplementary Judge of the Presidency of the National Justice System, Ricardo Fiorense, Secretary General of the Spanish Supreme Court, Mr. Ángel Tomás Rano, and Secretary General of the National Audience, Mr. Jesus Freire, Specialist of Digital Governance of the Inter-American Development Bank, Mr. Rua, delegates of the Bolivian, Jamaican, and Brazilian delegation, authorities, colleagues, and professionals who are both here on site and across and on the other side of the screen. Friends, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Spain. It's a great honor for me to be in this session today, to take part in the session today. This is just one of the events you will be sharing with us these days. We will have the chance to go deeper into different cooperation already crystallizing. I'd like to express my gratitude to the dear Director of Programs, Luis Prados, also to the Director General of Casa America, Enrique Ojeda, for hosting us in this wonderful place. This is a historic 19th century palace. the chance to enjoy it. If you're going to be here for just a few moments, for a couple of hours, this is a palace that has always signified a dialogue across institutions. Since 1992, it's a consortium between the Foreign Affairs Ministry of Spain, the community, the region of Madrid, and the municipality of Madrid, and it signifies something important. It is a meeting point, a transparent meeting point, as the director already mentioned. So this is part of a social dialogue, of a political dialogue, of a cultural dialogue between Latin America and Spain. But today, this is also going to become a space of, for dialogue around justice. I would also like to thank the cooperation with the Inter-American Development Bank, because together we have managed to organize this meeting for the common benefit of all our institutions, of all of us who are here, and also for the benefit of the different justice administrations in the different Latin American and Caribbean countries. In terms of justice services, the COVID-19 pandemic, as it was mentioned here before, that we are luckily more often than not. I think that I wonder what our democracies would be like, of the Spanish democracy and of our institutions, and mainly what would have been of our citizens, if this had happened 20 years ago, when the digitization processes were not implemented, and we would see institutions stopping, justice stopping, most likely. That's why I think that this process of digital transformation is an important tool that we need to use for something very relevant, which is social cohesion and territorial cohesion in all our countries. There's nothing that brings so much cohesion anywhere else for any citizens, but regardless of where they are and regardless of their living conditions, of their personal social conditions, their age, any other aspect that can bring those citizens to egalitarian and equal access to resources anywhere, regardless of where they are. There's booming of technology in our societies that move towards digitization in all fields is causing what some people have called a new industrial revolution, that is characterized by the very important role of innovation, technology, and innovation and technology in the economy, in the industrial sector, but also in the field of justice. We cannot deny how important this digital transformation is, especially as we see it from the perspective of the Minister of Justice in Spain. We have a project for the country with a lot of potential that will lead us to be more agile, more sustainable, more egalitarian in a service provision, and something very important, more human. And this also contributes to the ecological transition and for a more environmentally friendly justice. We're working in the field of 5.0 justice that is 24/7. And thus, we're going to cut transportation times to the different offices. And apart from that, we should also take care for our professionals and respect their right to disconnect. And we have become a reference point at European level. We're a reference country at European level, and internationally, we also have to lay the ground for the digital rights of citizens, as we did in Spain with the Charter of Digital Rights. And we also want to foster this at European level and at Ibero-American or Latin American level. So this charter is an ethical framework and a human rights framework that we need to consider from the justice administration. The ministry has injected 410 million euros of the resilience funds that were issued by the European Union to make progress in key elements such as particular dashboard helps us have judiciary activities and in a digital form, but adapted to people, for example, the elderly or people with disabilities or others who might be in a situation of vulnerability. Early appointment helps us have 200 procedures done, and it has benefited thousands of citizens already since January 2020 until August. 380,000 citizens have been benefited from this measure. We have had virtual hearings, and this is also a reality nowadays with over 600,000 trials that took place since 2020 to the 1st of July of this year. Another very important aspect that has been fostered has to do with interoperability. That is a technological dialogue between the different systems, procedural systems. This has completely changed the relationships between the justice system and other public administrations. Justice in Spain is digitized in all different jurisdictions so that all organizations and attorneys' office have digital records, and they can use digital signatures for any kinds of rulings and resolutions. This has been much work, and that's why we want to share our lessons learned. And we would like you to learn from our mistakes as well, so that we can prevent them from happening elsewhere in other places where these procedures are introduced. Likewise, any communications with professionals are now e-communications. Are supported by the standards that sets forth duties and other conditions for the operators, for the legal operators and other institutions involved, be it the Ministry of Justice or the regions whenever the powers for justice have been devolved. As an example, just during the first day of the legal year in Spain, different institutions submitted 800,000 notices, e-notices, to different legal operators. Likewise, in April this year, we started a European pilot, for the exchange of European investigation orders across different institutions in the EU, and through the e-Codex platform. Besides, from the Ministry of Justice, we are working with high-tech technology, right, Director? And we've been using artificial intelligence in the different systems. We have started introducing a textualization project of all the hearings so that all the recordings are immediately translated into text. And this reduces the workload of the different courthouses and also the videos. And from March 2022 to August 2022, we've had more than 420,000 hearings textualized. And the goal we have in all administrations is data. Data is one of the most important resources of our current societies, and they play an important role in the way that they are managed by public services, to the point of being at the core of any public agenda that tries to transform society. That's why we have been developing our project, Database Justice. The idea is to have, the goal is to have transparent, efficient justice that leads to efficacy, that goes to the heart of the problem. And beyond technological solutions, we've had a clear framework in cooperation with all the regions that have devolved competence in justice, and with the Council of the Judiciary Power and with the Attorney General. And this is this explains how to use data and how to utilize it. All these elements, all this progress, has to go hand in hand with the legal changes. We have 3 laws for efficiency, procedural, organizational, and digital efficiency are now, they are bills. They're about to be discussed in Parliament. Hopefully they will be passed. And the Digital Efficiency Act for the justice system tries to create the appropriate legal framework so that we have all the legal certainty needed for professionals and for citizens, abiding to the different rights, legal individual and proceeding-related rights. And we have a legal political term as well that we use, which is co-governance. That is a dialogue with all administrations, that we are aware of the fact that this is not a project by the ministry. This is a project for the country. This is a joint project for the different administrations involved and also from the regions. And we have to, of course, foster dialogue with other political forces. I'd like to highlight the role of the technical committee of the justice system. This is a cooperation organization for different institutions that supports justice establishments and the whole country. And this is one of the most important pillars of the e-justice system in our country. When we decided that we had to make the best, that it was time for us to make the best of all our potential, of all the technological tools we had at hand to use it for the justice system, when we tried to look at the digital transition of our public system, we were always clear that we had to make this in order to improve the digital, social, and territorial cohesion process. I'm sorry, I'm just like the director of Casa América.
Creo que no voy a poder seguir. Me van a tener que disculpar, pero
You'll have to apologize, but I don't think I'll be able to continue.
¿qué trago?
A moment. We want to have a person-based justice system. That's why from the ministry we want to do away with all the gaps, the digital gap, the generational gap, the territorial gap, disability gap, vulnerability gap, through a very important element, which is digital cohesion. An important aspect we need to consider is the improvement of all the aspects that facilitate universal access to justice in the widest terms possible. To conclude, I'd like to refer to an important element in our ministry's policy that is also enabled by digital tools, the access of women to justice. That's another challenge that we have to face, especially for women in rural areas, women who are victims of crimes, women with disabilities, migrant women, women in the LGBT community, because they have to trust that the public justice service needs a gender approach, not just in legal terms, but also through the training and sensitization of all our staff members. And finally, I'd like to express my gratitude to be here with you, to do it here in Casa América. I'd like to thank the director as well, the director of digital transformation. I'd like to thank him for his help. I wish you a very fruitful dialogue and much success. I'm sorry, my voice is not there, but I'm voiceless, but the words are still with me. Thank you.
Muchísimas gracias, ministra.
Thank you, Minister. We are very glad that you could finish your talk. Thank you for your kind opening words. Before moving into the next panel, let us now have the panelists going into the next room so we can put their microphones.
Para la siguiente sesión contaremos
Next session, we have the opening words by the Data Coordinator and Digital Governance of Inter-American Development Bank that will chair the discussion panel, Digitization as a Catalyzer for Digital Evolution. Thank you. Good afternoon to all of you. Good morning to those that are on the other side of the ocean. If there is any doubt of the commitment by the Minister of Justice in Spain, this doubt is no longer possible. It's incredible the efforts she made to share her speech until the end, such an effort. We have an excellent panel this afternoon that will give content to the minister's words. What is this place of sharing between Latin America and Spain to share experiences about the justice system in this regard? Do you understand? Are you following the Spanish? Yes. Before starting a discussion with the panel, and let me introduce you to our experts that is coming from different cultures, geographies, and roles. We have the honor to have with us Wilfredo Chavez, Attorney General in Bolivia. Welcome, Wilfredo. Following the order, we have the honor to have with us Maria Jesus Fraile Martín, Secretary of the government in the Spanish audience in Spain. Fabio Clem de Oliveira is also with us, President of the Justice Court of Espírito Santo in Brazil. Welcome, Fabio. And closer to me, Ricardo Fiorese, Secondary Deputy Judge of the National Council Presidency in Brazil. Welcome, Ricardo. Let me give you some background before giving the floor to our panelists. Some background information about the existing challenges to the justice system in Latin America and the Caribbean, both of the regions where our delegates come from. A high percentage of Latin America or at the Caribbean, they think that justice system is slow or very low. That means precarity and difficulty in handling things. A recent study conducted by the OECD says that the judicial process in Latin America takes more than 600 days, when the average in the OECD is 200. That means 3 times the time. So people don't really trust the justice systems in Latin America and the Caribbean. In the OECD, the average level of trust is above 50%. The average in Latin America is only between 30 and 30%. So that's almost half of it. I would continue giving information about the challenges that justice system faces in Latin America and about digitization. You know that UN has recently published the digital governance scoring, and digitization is still a pending subject in Latin America. Of the here present countries, only Brazil is on the position 49 of the list. Some of other countries are behind. So what's happening in Latin America? There are still important challenges ahead, so that's why it's so important to be here today, welcomed by the Spanish government, by the Minister of Justice, so they share with us some of the processes they are currently developing and the lessons learned, so we can save time, stumbling blocks, and money. So let us now start with our panelists. Wilfredo, General Attorney, I would like to start with you. I know that in Bolivia, to implement a digital tool, the name is ROPE, the obligatory register of state processes. Please, we are very interested in this panel to start sharing to the audience whether digitization really has an impact on the public, on the government, in saving of time and money, or is just in theory. So what was the effect of ROPO in Bolivia? Thank you. I would like to, sorry, the speaker is not using the microphone. We might now ask him to use the microphone so we can proceed with the interpreting. Sorry again, this is a message from the booth, but no. The state participation. Now we are around 80,000 processes a day, and this system is compulsory. It's a system that allows the country to have a general follow-up of the registration of processes and do its follow-up, and of course to participate, and on many cases with the agents of those processes. And something that is also interesting is that this register can be autonomously modified, and there are certain progress in the system. The system was designed at the same time of the law 6 years ago, is fully implemented, and the system handles from 700 to 800 cases every month. We understand that by the end of the year, of those 80,000 cases or processes, at least 15,000 will have been closed and completed. Now, what does this system allow us to do? To identify the state's priorities, the type of processes we have in general, the amount of those processes, and in general, we speak about $10,000 million. And the state is part of those court cases, these 80,000 court cases, I repeat, that are still pending. We have legal problems that are not part of ROPE, but structural problems related to our procedural laws, especially the contentious and administrative processes or fiscal processes are processes that have very old systems that have not been replaced. So coordinating with our Minister of Justice, we have designed 5 draft bills related to the ROPE system. We are consolidating them. We're working on those draft bills, and we hope that in a few months we'll have the final drafts to share it with the Ministry and with the Legislative Assembly. Is therefore something we have started so that the system might receive new processes. I can also state that we've been working for the last 2 years. We've been working in a reform of the system in order to make it more dynamic, more participative, and more secure. So we now have at least, we have also worked thanks to BID funding, and the ROPE was funded by it, is now going to be upgraded in its second release. We hope that that will be by the end of the next year. What can I say? In the framework of the digital governance system implemented by our president, Luis Alce, that started a few years ago with Law 164, the country should start a technological era, especially the Attorney General offices, a system that can control the processes so that it becomes an open service for the public and for the prosecutors. We have systems that cross information with the Bar Association, so we need to give to all the lawyers the technological facilities that we didn't have in the past. ROPA is just the beginning, but due to the pandemic, now the situation has become more and more digital. This digital transformation is within the framework of a principle followed by our government and our president to transform the justice system in the country. And finally, I could conclude by saying that at present the Ministry of Justice has been working on this subject with a lot of responsibility with all the judiciary, with the Supreme Court and some others to get interconnectivity so the different agents of the justice system administration might all of them share information depending on their level. They could share most relevant or information or confidential information. Some might have more practical hearings and faster processes, and the information flow necessary for cautelary measures or everything that requires fast information, not to go on working on hard copies or papers. The Attorney General will start using open source. This is something that we had also considered as an institutional objective. Thank you, Attorney General. Behind those numbers, we can speak about efficiency, savings, a positive impact for the public sector and also for the citizens. Thank you, President Fabio. Let us see the situation in Brazil. We have an important Brazilian delegation here, and today, and the Minister also mentioned that the effort of digitizing the justice system has to do with efficiency and savings, but also with inclusion, not leaving anybody behind, so that everybody has an access to justice. Can you please speak about Brazil? Brazil was a country that progressed quite a lot in digitizing the justice system, with some differences in the country, but according to your experience in Espiritu Santo, this digitization of justice, did it really generate more inclusion so that more people with some type of limitation could access justice? Can you speak about the experience in Brazil?
We apologize, but once again, the microphone is not working, so we cannot interpret what the speaker is saying. We apologize. Secretary General of the Audiencia Nacional of the National Audience, Maria Jesus Fraile Martin, Dr. Wilfredo Chavez, Attorney General of the Plurinational State of Bolivia, Ricardo Florese, Assistant Judge to the Presidency of the National Council of Justice of Brazil, Dr. Ron Six, who is the President of the Supreme Court in Jamaica. I'd like to ask your permission to all of you to greet you on behalf of Mr. Pedro Rosa, who is the President of the governance system of the Secretary for Information and Digitation in our state of Espiritu Santo. I say this because in our perspective, we've also already had the Vice President of the, I was already the Vice President and the President of the Regional Courts of Espiritu Santo, the Vice President of the Justice Court of Espiritu Santo. He was the president of the Justice Court of Espiritu Santo, and he was also the president of the Association of Lawyers, State Lawyers. And after all these experiences, after seeing all this in his career, he decided to join me and create and work in the Supreme Court, or in the Court of Justice of Espiritu Santo. Colleague Pedro has an important expertise in IT. I would never dream of that. To be honest, I do not have any kind of IT information, IT expertise. He's the only one who has this expertise. And I say this because this is a person who reached all these heights in his career. And then he offered to have this cooperation with the presidency of the Justice Court of Espiritu Santo. And that, apart from being highly satisfying, it was something I could not have achieved myself. If we want to imagine how we want to drive this process, and I say this because I do not have data in terms to like other speakers in this panel, so I have to go to written text to tell you about this, the situation of our difficulties and how the state of Espiritu Santo is still walking slowly and how we are trying to digitize judiciary and how we are trying to implement e-justice. In the Court of Espírito Santo in December last year. And for a long time, I was imagining where we could get, because we did not have enough staff, or we did not have a framework, a political framework in the state of Espírito Santo, and whether we could reach the critical point of this kind of technological gap, both in terms of the legal proceedings as well as of the governance aspects of the Court of Justice. So I think that each generation that goes into an administration of this kind and that brings with it the mission and the duty, the ethical duty of modernization, of making the world a better place, of civilizing the world for themselves and for others to come. That's also the impulse that has brought us to beautiful Madrid. And that's why we answered the invitation of the Inter-American Development Bank to exchange knowledge and also to exchange experiences, to listen to some experiences and to share experiences in terms of, but of course, if we speak about IT, it's Ronaldo Pedroso who should be speaking about that. Each generation, on the shoulders of our generation, and I say this particularly because of what we find in the state of Espírito Santo, on our shoulders, we have now survived the biggest pandemic in 100 years. It took 6 million lives and 180 million people into poverty. And on our shoulders, we have great responsibilities when we look at the functions that are inherent to the system of law and the rule of law and the justice systems. We have to not only advocate for democratic values, but we need to educate ourselves in terms of how we can build a mechanism so that democracy becomes a tangible reality through the materialization of rights and social justice for the improvement of citizens for whom laws are just fiction. I remember that I come from the small but booming state of Espírito Santo, and I'm honored to preside this court for 2 years. And in this mission, I also represent our tasks, and our tasks are not minor. We are the 4th smallest state in Brazil. We only have 78 municipalities, and our population is around 4 million inhabitants. It's small in size, but we are big in the strength of our people whose work is part of the economic activities of the state, and they grow above the national average. And it has reached 156.6 million reais. This is the biggest GDP in our history, aggregated GDP in our history. And however, we do not have a reflection of this in a legal system. We have an archaic system, an archaic structure that is not fitted to the needs of those who strive for justice and who come to the justice system as the last recourse and as a response to the struggles. So we started, when we speak about the judicial system in Brazil, we started in 2009, but in Espírito Santo, we started in 2022, and we have an acquis of around 75% of its total and paper proceedings. And this is due to many of the difficulties that we face in the legal system in Espírito Santo. We do not have the appropriate technological, economic, and structural conditions. We do not have enough budget for investment. The IT sector is not prioritized, and this has been so for a decade. The number of servers is really very low, so this becomes an unsustainable framework. And the Court of Espírito Santo is the last one in the ranking of the different states in terms of technology, in terms of IT, and in terms of productivity. We are sure that this uncomfortable place is linked to the legal organization that is not adapted to the needs of contemporary times. We're speaking about the global integration of communications virtually, of cloud applications, totally digital governments whose services are available for any through any mobile device. And with the metaverse as an alternative aspect of reality, we still have 130 million proceedings that are still in paper. And they are still in the drawers and the cupboards. We have 830,000 processes and thousands of lives that depend exclusively on the capacity of the mental organization capacity of our staff, of our civil servants and judges. And paradoxically speaking, it was a crisis that stemmed from the COVID-19 crisis and all the suffering related to it that forced the judiciary powers of the state of Espírito Santo to face the task of virtualizing our work, making it digital. It pushed us to make decisions in terms of a digital transformation of the institution. And this was done not only to have a fast response to the legal needs digitally during social distancing times, but as a strategy, as a management strategy to improve our legal efficiency in the long run. And the management we have in the Espírito Santo and supporting the members of this court, we're all convinced that there's no other way forward. There's no other way to reduce or to improve our low efficiency, and also to improve the access of citizens to justice, and also the processing of documents. We can only do that through a robust and sound digital transition. Here we're not speaking just about digitation, the digitation of the acquis, and the compulsory introduction of the different procedures through digital means. Our plan is thinking about a sustainable and accessible digital justice, and we're more ambitious. We want to stop being the avant-garde of the ones who are lagging behind, but to become a model for open justice, safe justice, and collaborative justice, and that is fast and transparent. And this will only be possible if we use disruptive solutions. It is in this sense that we have applied and we have used the expertise of the Inter-American Development Bank as leaders and to develop projects of digital transition in Latin America. And they have a deep knowledge of digital transition and digital transformation in a region. In order to underline the importance of a global approach, of a comprehensive approach, on 16th December 2021 and on the 29th of December, we started our internal discussions with one of our colleagues under Minister Luis Fuchs, who is the President of the Council, Judiciary Council. And on the 30th, we started with a meeting with the colleagues here, and he's represented here by Miguel Juan Porrua. And on the 4th of January, we had the second meeting with the bank. And after that, we also conducted different meetings hosted by our colleague Pedro Rosa and his team, his IT team, and with his own expertise, which he offered for the development of these activities. We should also remember that the projects funded by the Inter-American Development Bank also have the commitment of contributing to the socio-economic development of Latin American countries through social cohesion, productivity, innovation, and economic integration. Thus, we are not just looking for funding from the bank to improve processes. We want the support of the bank for a deep restructuring of the judiciary power of the state of Espírito Santo for the coming 5 years. And here I have to emphasize how grateful we are institutionally for the support that we have received throughout this year by the bank to the state of Espírito Santo, even before we managed to sign the funding agreement. And this shows to what level this institution is committed to the improvement of the justice system in Brazil. They are an ally, and they are in line with the macro challenges of the Brazilian judiciary system, and with a perspective to integrate our system with a 4.0 justice and with the promotion of access to justice through actions for a collaborative use of products that are using new technologies and artificial intelligence. We have collectively drafted, and in record time, a modernization program for the judiciary system in the state of Espírito Santo, and that was the most important element for the funding proposal. And we have a project with different digital transformation items, and also with the implementation of different judiciary policies to improve innovation and the institution of governance principles, effectiveness, responsibility, or accountability, and transparency, so that we can foster access to digital justice. However, digital transformation is always part of the program, but we also have to highlight that this is just a vector for the modernization of our working processes and to create a strong and sound judiciary structure with a consolidation of our mission. The underlining of technological modernization is also linked to the premises of the construction of a new public service provision through structured actions and looking at 3 main components and then dozens of initiatives. So from our perspective, these are the basis for sustainable justice and also guarantee for judiciary efficacy. And we're looking at this from under 3 axes: the strengthening of governance, with the redesigning of the organizational architecture, and with the introduction of new working processes using clearly identified skills for digital justice. And secondly, the creation of administrative management solutions and governance solutions so that we can improve the efficiency and be more efficient in the management and cooperation with the sectors, and also with the skills training, continuous skills training program. Then introduction of new technologies for the digital transformation of justice, with the development and usage of digital services for the population, and using technology as a support and aid for decision-making in institutions. And also smart data management, the integration with other administrative sectors, the use of AI for processes and data safety. And also an efficient management of both physical and technological infrastructure. We're speaking about equipment and software. We define the architecture and the technological architecture that's needed. The migration to the cloud, and also accessibility, both physical and technological and digital accessibility. Our expectations, ladies and gentlemen, is that by the end of this program, we hope to have achieved modernization processes of the judiciary system of the state of Espírito Santo, and we hope that this is adapted to the needs of the times. And this means, first and foremost, a restructuring and a management of a judiciary system that's committed with the reduction of inequality and with the improvement of democracy and with legal safety, and with legal certainty. And this will be only done when we have justice at our fingertips for each and every citizen, and that the rights are accomplished by using new technologies. To conclude, I'd like to say, Mr. Miguel Purra, Mr. Ricardo Fiorese, Dr. Maria Jesus Fraile, Mr. Wilfredo, to all of you who are part of this event. It's from the time that I accepted my position, when in my speech, I emphasized that we were going to bring as much energy as possible to this complementing of the social process and of the digital transformation. We will bring our energies to the digital transformation of the court. And in the morning and now, and we have the Minister of Justice here with us as well, I've heard comforting words from everyone, because I chose two elements, two levels, so to speak. We want to leave the level of IT to reach the level of equality for all the states in Brazil, and also within the state of Espírito Santo. We hope that the judiciary powers of Espírito Santo, that it is more human, and that's what we really want to do. Thank you so much.
Obrigado, Presidente Fabio.
President Fabio, yeah, we don't have our friend Rodrigo with us, but Mariano Lafuente, he's an expert of the bank in Brazil, and also Mr. Caferata here to support you, and we would like to thank you for opening up, for being so honest to speak about everything that is not working today. We need to be courageous to be public about it, and this is the beginning of the solution. Those 780,000 procedures, they are an opportunity for inclusion. And from the bank, we would like to thank you and Espírito Santo for the opportunity to work with you in a project that I agree with you, when implemented, will put and place Espírito Santo at the top of the digital justice system. We're now going to give the floor to Judge Ricardo. Please be patient. I know we're a bit behind. There will be a presentation from the rest of the panelists, but because this is interesting, I don't want to cut this conversation. Ricardo Judge said, and also the Minister spoke about governance and co-governance. How do you handle in Brazil, that is such a complex country as Spain, from the administrative viewpoint, how do you manage governance or co-governance of the digitization of justice? How do you manage this from the capital with the different states? And please also share with us what you want to share about the digitization of the justice system in Brazil. It will probably be your only chance to speak. Thank you. Thank you. I'd like to thank you all for the possibility to participate in this event and to get to know about the wealth and experience of the Spanish government. Spain, that is an ally and collaborator at the Inter-American Development Bank. But before anything, good afternoon to all of you. It is true that the word collaboration and co-governance, Miguel, is an expression that we are very interested in, but it's also a concern, it's a main challenge for us. And the second term, and I will go back to governance, but the second term that is very much used among you is the term efficiency. In fact, this is the topic of the panel. And Miguel, I ask your permission to do a small, introduce a small comment and the Brazilian viewpoint, and it has to do with a difference in those terms. We use the word efficacy as an indicator for attaining our objectives, but in fact, Miguel, at the CNJ level, there is a new body that was created not so long ago in order to define judicial policies. The vision of the CNJ is similar to the Spanish government. in everything related to digital transformation, and I would like to add digital transformation with a human side. This that in parallel could pay attention to the term efficacy and efficiency, but that also takes into account the final users, that it also takes into account the final users' expectations or difficulties in accessing the justice system itself, and always taking into account the importance of respecting the public's fundamental rights. So we share the same view with the Spanish government, and we try to implement and develop it through an important program that includes some sub-programs, and is very much along the lines that of everything that has been introduced here, to get to the justice user in an efficient manner, guaranteeing a secure journey. So there's an easiness of access during the journey itself, so that the end of the process might also be efficient, so that is finally beneficial for the user. And under this viewpoint, we have the viewpoint of efficiency. Now, about the way we relate to governance, this program, due to the fact that it's very wide and complex, and here I will also refer to what's been said in this morning session, the impact of the pandemic. I frequently say in Brazil that the pandemic made us go faster and become visionaries to what without a pandemic might have taken 5 to 10 years. And therefore the pandemic made us run faster, think faster about future scenarios, defining this future. And in parallel, the pandemic has made us realize in a rather urgent manner some of the existing scenarios. In this regard, we have attained some successes, but also some drawbacks. So some of our choices were not probably the right ones, but and also have a career in the public administration, and I like to use those terms. So in the cycle of PSC to one, we are now thinking about success continuity, analyzing and correcting everything that was not rightly chosen, or the less successful. What we can see in our experience in Brazil is that some concepts gave good results, what we call a 100 digital process, or a trial, those processes that all the agents can handle fully digitally. Even at the High Court or the hearing, they can be carried out remotely. We don't still have a full analysis of the situation. We do have some empirical analysis, and I should say that I'm an enthusiast of the findings and research studies and analysis that indicate that there is a reduction in the time to handle a process in everything related to 100% digital trials. We can even reduce it in half, or even one third, or even by half, compared to a non-digital process. And we need to redefine some concepts or ideas that would lead us to an efficient or efficacious digital transformation that is not only transferring digital contents from the paper into an electronic system, and there are still some reluctances by some civil servants and magistrates, but we have seen those reluctances in accepting, for example, the participation of remote witnesses at the court hearing. There is still some reluctances, but a humanized digital transformation could be one of the main principles to set the users' trust on the system. So where do I see, how can we apply the principle of good faith? A witness that will clarify about the truth from their home, unless proven the opposite. We don't need to think that this witness will be biased in his or her testimony. We need to think in terms of good faith. There are situations where we can make real progress in consolidating what humanized digital transformation entails. But to respond to your question and coming back to the governance, we in Brazil are now using the expression collaborative co-governance, as President Fabio has introduced. What do we mean by collaborative governance? The main reason for this term, and as the Inter-American Development Bank is advising us, the humanized digital transformation, again, it has an important ambition. It includes different projects that, if we analyze them, they can convince us that we need to think of humanized digital transformation. But this is a huge challenge, the challenge of implementing the projects and therefore developing good technological solutions. And this is when the collaborative term is important. Our center is not in condition now, has not have the necessary conditions to develop those deals, and we need to gather all the judiciary institutions of our country. But it's not enough with developing IT solutions, or it's not enough to make progress in some conceptual definitions. What we need is a lifelong training. We need to disseminate training and upskilling. And in our structure, we have judicial schools, and that's the way we can unfold the collaborative governance. We need a generalized training. Are we going to overcome this challenge? Yes. The challenge of developing training, the judges, the civil servants, the justice civil servants, so they know how to use those tools. We need to think that we are working with IT technologies, and this happens on a daily basis from 1 minute into the next. So we need to provide these actions, these training actions, a full continuity. So Miguel, our concern is that this collaborative governance might be useful to sustain the system as the Spanish government did, a humanized digital transformation. Therefore, yeah, what you said, we could be discussing it for the next 3 days. I believe that the Spanish justice system model follows the idea that the citizen is at the center. Let's wait for Aitor in the next panel. And because I want him to be a friend, still a friend, because I'm just making this panel very long, and will now, therefore, give the floor to Maria Jesus. Thank you for your patience. I believe we were quite optimistic when we thought that 200 years of the justice system can be translated into a 25 minutes conversation. It probably takes longer, but your patience will have a compensation. There are two questions for you. The first has to do with how do you attain cultural change in collectivity that are quite traditional, and this digitization might need a transformation on many ways of thinking. How did you do it here in Spain? And then can you speak about the specific changes in improving the efficiency in any of the processes that you wish to highlight? And thank you again for your patience. Thank you, Miguel Angel. I'm sure that patience is always awarded. I thank you for your questions, and I want to thank Aitor Cubo, the General Director of Digital Transformation, for having invited me to be here and participate in this exchange of experiences.
No doubt I have a positive message. I have to say that digital tools work, and they help us have a more agile, transparent, and efficient justice, and to have a speedy justice and quality justice, which is what the users need and want. I'll try to be brief so that Aitor does not get angry with us, but we have to explain where we were a few years ago and where we are now. Right now we have a procedural management system. We have a electronic communication system that allows us to have e-communication, and everything is agile in this communication system. The paperless work, sometimes it doesn't work in the justice system. And we have also the mediation that helps humanized justice, we've mentioned several times. And what has helped us in this process of change? In my own experience, I think that first the pandemic has been an important lever, an important wedge, and it has pushed some projects forward that were a bit scary before. The professional, each and everyone's own professional experience, and is individual. In my case, I've been working in the National Court as a sensitive area, and that's where this project of digital transformation was implemented. And due to the types of crimes that are judged, terrorism, corruption, these are sensitive crimes for citizens, and especially sensitive to handle due to the large amount of parties involved. The process has led to a safe and agile communication with the parties, and this has improved the management and the internal management of the procedures of the proceedings. And we haven't made headlines in the worst way possible. We could have, but we haven't had any big hindrances, and this was thanks to a good cooperation with the Ministry and with good internal organization to foresee what needs we had and what kinds of projects could be implemented. Apart from that, we also have other possibilities and for justice to evolve and to be even more competitive, even more efficient, more agile. First, we need to interconnect all the different systems. This important push from other IT actors. This is always going to be helpful, but we've already taken steps in the transformation, the digital transformation process, that in Spain we now seem to think that they're part of a day-to-day life, but they were not there a short while ago. We have, for example, the notices. You don't have to go to the court. People who are arrested, they do not have to come to court because we can have a video conference for the testimony. We do not need to stop a trial because a lawyer cannot come from the other part of Spain to the place where the trial is taking place. We can do that virtually. And the same thing happens with any party as long as this is in the law. A witness can intervene through a video conference. All these steps are so obvious that we cannot not imagine that we have to wait for a detainee to be brought to a place. And also thinking about safety and the economics. And before we had to stop trials often because we could not have these systems, these virtual systems. So these are all steps that help us in our day-to-day operations, and slowly users and professionals and justice are going to manage this process. They will see the advantages of it, and they get on board, and we evolve. And anyway, all I can say is that all these tools in the field of digital transformation that we have introduced in the space where I work and that have been introduced in the Ministry of Justice, they all help us in what we're discussing, that we become more agile, we are more transparent in terms of procedures, and also that citizens can access justice without having to travel, and we are saving time and money, and we have improved immediate access. So my key message is that digital transformation is a must. We've seen it in our own experience in the case of the National Court. And when we thought that, oh, this is such a sensitive court and it might be difficult, but we can do it. We can materialize this and we can continue working. That's not a problem. So this is the experience that I can share with you. Thank you so much. If we can do this in the National Court, we can do it anywhere. Thank you so much, panelists. I will not take more time because otherwise I thought will stop talking to me. I do think that we need these spaces for dialogue. There are so many visions, so many experiences, and I was not capable of cutting the speakers. Thanks to Casa America. The agenda is packed, and I think that we have many things to encourage us to continue with these meetings. Thank you, panelists, audience, and I'm so sorry. I will give you the floor now so you can take the stage and continue with the next panel.
Buenas tardes a todos.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you to the Casa de America for helping us organize this discussion. We're sorry, but the sound's not working again. We apologize. And before I introduce the panelists, I'd like to make a couple of comments regarding the previous speakers and what has happened during the afternoon, evening. Luis, or somebody mentioned that the soul of digital transformation is on the digital side, but this is not true. The technology is in the market, and IT people are out there, and we have several ones, and otherwise we can hire more. But the project of digital transformation of something that's so sensitive as justice needs to have a strong political leadership. That's the question. Why do things sometimes happen and sometimes they don't? Because of an absence or presence of political leadership. And I want to discuss this in this discussion because we have high-level political representatives. They're not just technologists. They are people who have decision-making capacities. They have the political capacity to do things. And this is something I wanted to underline because the minister didn't have to change the civil register model. It was the same for 150 years, but she has done it because she wants to be citizen-focused, and it's difficult. It was a model of 150 years of age. What about digitation? We do not have to go into artificial intelligence or robotics and justice. Because if it's something informal, you're more comfortable. If you're not shaking the waters, it's easier, you're comfortable. However, there's a political will to dare and to transform justice, and in particular, digitation is a very important element of this model and of that transformation. However, as we heard in the previous panel, we need to have a soul in this digital transformation. We're speaking about the justice sector. That's why in this panel we're going to be focusing on the ethical, human-based vision, the elimination of gaps and the protection of victims and vulnerable people. We have to do that because we are the justice system. We cannot do a digital transformation just thinking about economic aspects or efficacy or eliminating the work overload, the burden for the civil servants. We have to have an ethical view, a view that includes the protection of those who are vulnerable. And that brings justice to the administration, a just view of justice. And I think that technology, just like digital technology, just like any other technology in energy, in medicine, and drug research, has a good side, but it might have a downside. Technology as such is not bad, but we have to use it well so that this does not generate new gaps or so that it does not generate injustices, which is very fitting for this topic. That's why I wanted to focus on this more human-based vision. I'm sure we will have more aspects to address, but without any further ado, I wanted to introduce the speakers in the panel so that we can discuss these aspects. And I would like to be as brief as possible and so that we can establish a good dialogue and for the time we have so that we can share, all of us, our ideas and the topics that are related to this matter. I think that this is a thrilling topic. We have with us today Brian Sykes, who's the president of the Supreme Court in Jamaica, and Antenor Cardoso Suarez Jr., he's the vice president of the Justice Court of the State of Pernambuco in Brazil. We also have the judge, Vânia Marques Marinho, who's the president of the Technology and Information Commission and the Court of Justice in Amazonas in Brazil, and Ángel Tomás Ruano Maroto, governor and secretary of the Supreme Court in Spain. And this is the first question for you, to see how technology can help us bridge gaps, the different gaps we have in terms of age, in terms of economic differences, gender gap, territorial gap. How do you think technology can help us bridge those gaps? So, Mr. Sykes, you have the floor.
Inter-American Development Bank for providing this opportunity. And just to put everything in perspective, because I've come to recognize that in this context, whenever a person's here of a Supreme Court, they think of an appellate court, an apex court, a court at the top of the legal system. But in my case, our Supreme Court is actually a trial court. And above that is the Court of Appeal. So I am the Chief Justice in the trial court, and my cases go on appeal to the Court of Appeal. So just to get that perspective correct. In terms of utilization of technology in the circumstances which the moderator is asking, I give a story. It's a very real story, and I look at it in the context of child maintenance. So we have a situation in which the mother comes to court and she takes out an application. The court makes an order. The person, the male, is complying with the order, and then there's a default. The system requires her now to come back to the court to seek to enforce the order. Now, in a paper-based system or in times past, that was perhaps acceptable. But in the modern world now, can the courts be a bit more proactive in that regard? And oftentimes the payment is to be made to a particular account by a certain date. That is something that can be tracked digitally. And so why should she have to come back to court to engage the court processes again, go through a long hearing again in order to enforce? Couldn't digital tools be used to notify the court that there's non-payment? And then the court contacts the defendant to say, well, you have not complied, and therefore begin the process of shortening the gap between non-compliance and enforcement, because ultimately, who is the real victim here? The child, who is to be maintained by the father. And so I think that if we look at it from that perspective and using digital tools, you can close the gap there. You can make it less onerous for the mother to enforce. You can make it more beneficial to the child and reduce the time that is necessary. And all of this technology is available within the world generally. Not yet in our court system, so we have a far way to go in that regard. But to me, those are ways and means in which digital technology can be used to improve our legal processes. Because ultimately, the court is a service institution. It's really about service. We don't manufacture things. We don't manufacture chairs. We make decisions, we make orders, and we contribute to the rule of law. And so in that sense, we're a service institution. If we think of it from the standpoint of how can we improve our service delivery constantly, making it easier for the persons whom we serve to get the services from the courts, then I think we'll be on the right path. So that the technology in and of itself, while helpful to me, if it does not translate into easier access, faster processes, easier interaction with the courts, then it really is pointless. So those are my brief remarks so far.
Completamente de acuerdo.
I agree with you, and I'm just going to give you an example.
Se ha comentado
Has been mentioned by Brian. In fact, technology allows to make automatized handling, especially non-payment or non-compliance in relation to child maintenance, but any other matter. The fact that technology allows the automation, what the administrative has to do for the public, it allows us to get equality. You don't need to have a lawyer or know about your rights to have access to this, but the administration on a proactive manner detects that there is a non-compliance and it automatically activates a seizure or an economic resource without the vulnerable person to having to start the whole process over again. So it's very relevant about the role of technologies to eliminate the gaps, to eliminate the divide that is quite significant. But not only divides, if we focus on vulnerable people, Mr. Cardoso, I don't know if any specific thing for victims, for vulnerable people, and the role of technology in this conversation. I can refer about the inclusion of people, of vulnerable people, and to reduce social inequalities, divide, as you say, in Spain.
The Court of Pernambuco has developed some tools to protect people who are at risk, for example, women or people who are discriminated against because of the gender, sexual orientation or gender identity. So we have a tool that's being implemented in the Court of Pernambuco, in the state of Pernambuco, called NISIA. This is an app, and the person, the victim of domestic violence, can be part of the process, and it is also following the Charter of Women. And I think that this is an important tool we have in order to reduce and to bridge those gaps and reduce those inequalities. We also have a tool and a social inclusion tool that allows us to allows young people, children and teenagers who are under social educational measures, that is, people who are in juvenile detention or that are in juvenile institutions, that they are transferred to the social educational measures, and that they can have access to the labor market and access to work in the Court of Justice. And I think that all these tools, apart from other ones that are being developed nowadays in our court, and with the support of SMAPI, that is the high school of the Judges School of Pernambuco, the Judges Association of Pernambuco, we have some tools that might be developed, and I'm sure that they will bring about positive changes and bring for the excluded, from the vulnerable populations. I was thinking, for example, about the job of the Institute of Ideas that we have in the MAPE, in that College of the State of Pernambuco, and we see, for example, what we define as predatory demands. These are serialized demands that are there planned by lobbies, and they actually is a type of lawfare. They kind of block the legal system. So with that blocking of the legal system, we lose sight of all the proceedings that should be conducted and that are important. So these are the experiences that I bring here, and I am very grateful that I can be with you and at this time with the Inter-American Bank and with also the Ministry of Justice. I'm very happy to be listening to the experiences that you're all sharing. Quite the opposite. Thank you for sharing your experiences. We want to get to know them in more detail, because when we're thinking about apps, mobile apps, this helps, and it can help protect those who are more vulnerable. So in this case, and also the one you mentioned with the school, cooperation with the school, we would love to have more information about that, because we want to learn from your good practices, and we want to bring them also to our country. We have many tools. It's just something I forgot. In Nisia, why is the name Nisia? Nisia is a woman in the 1800s. Before the 1900s, Nisia was the first poet and writer and feminist writer in Brazil, and that's why we call Nisia that school, because she was a strong woman, she was a warrior, and she is an example of a strong woman that we have in Brazil. I couldn't find her. I was searching online, but please let us know. Because naming and giving voices to strong women, giving a space for the voices of strong women is a matter of justice as well. So I think this is a wonderful project. Thank you so much. This is real time. That's fantastic. I got the info in real time. Another question we wanted to discuss, what does digital transformation mean from the point of view of ethics and justice? How do they interact? How do they relate when we're speaking about digital transformation, ethics, and justice? First, I'd like to thank you for the opportunity of being here and getting so much new knowledge and getting to know the level of technological development that was already implemented here by the Spanish Ministry of Justice. I come from the Amazon, from Amazonas. This is the biggest state in Brazil. It's larger than some European countries. So technology and the distance is really big, and it's a barrier for people's access to justice in a wider sense. And in this sense, I think that we can have wider access to justice with education. Our court, however, was the first court in Brazil that had 100% digitized acquis. But this is not translated in terms of digital access from citizens to the legal system. And in this sense, I think that this is an ethical matter, because ethics has to do with values, with moral values, that are present in a society. So I think that we really need to acknowledge that there's a lack of equality in access, there's lack of equal access, so that we can materialize an ethical approach, and also with money, with budget in it, as many of you have already mentioned. After that, and thinking about this, the court has decided to have chambers of access to justice, because we know that the inland is very poor, and citizens do not always have the chance to have a mobile phone to have access to justice. So in court, they have a computer and a civil servant, because sometimes we just leave a computer and people do not know how to handle it. So if we're trying to facilitate access, then they have to have somebody there, even if they're going for a digital process. They need to have somebody to guide them initially, and especially at the beginning, so that they can start searching for justice that's so pressing. I think that this ethical aspect has to do with the legal framework, and we have the Data Protection Act in Brazil, and this is the General Data Protection Act. I think you have a similar framework in Spain as well. And that's very important in this framework, because any data that starts circulating freely online can be treated responsibly, can be processed responsibly, not just in the course of the proceedings, but also that even when the data is erased, that we respect the identity of the person and their intrinsic values, so that this is not disseminated. For example, the social conditions or the social background of the applicant. And I'm not sure whether I've explained myself clearly, but this is what I wanted to share. Yes, and you've highlighted two very important matters. First, how technology is key in order not to leave anybody behind, whether they live far away, they do not have economic access. We need to find the solutions to bring justice, especially for those individuals. And then another challenge we have with ethics when we speak about data, I think we share that, and how we can protect data and sensitive data and that's used in the legal system. And I think that's a matter that we could go into deeply, and we could spend many days talking about this. Ethics, biases, and algorithms regarding certain types of data, and how this can, to a certain extent, maybe not influence, but provide information that's misleading for legal decisions later. And this is an interesting topic we would love to discuss in detail. But as we're behind schedule, and I think we should do these meetings more often, we will give the floor now to Ángel Tomás Ruano to see how, through technology, we can improve the lives of citizens.
First, I'd like to thank the bank and the Inter-American Development Bank for the opportunity to be here this afternoon and also this morning during this panel discussion. The problem here when we speak about technology, and for the last 20 years, I saw that technology was an opportunity, but the problem is not to think whether technology is good or bad. Technology per se is not good nor bad. Technology is neutral, and then there is the use of technology. So the question was, can you repeat it? How technology can improve the citizens' life? Technology will improve citizens' lives. Any of us that we're of certain age, if we go back, if we think in the rear mirror, I'm sure that 30 years ago, our life conditions were not as good as today. So to attain a better quality of life, this has to do with technology. The risk is if we focus everything on technology, if everything is only technology, we need to into account that technology as an should not be before human being. As Renaissance people said, human being is at the center of everything. This is what we should always take into account to self-limit ourselves. And I would like to finish with just a small mention to data protection. What does technology do when the legislator in our country in 1978, Article 18.4, says that there will be an act that regulates the use of computing or IT, anticipating that it might be a too powerful tool. And if this was thought of 42 years ago, when we now see all those applications and services, when we couldn't dream about all of them, what could we say now then today? We shouldn't give up on technology. Technology per se might be good, and what we mainly have to do, as it was said in the previous panel, we need to make technology more human. We don't have to leave anybody behind. And the key word is training from primary education, but also among the adults, not to have such divides. It's very difficult to bridge the technological divide. If you added to a gender divide, a territorial divide, an age divide, is very difficult. All of them interact. So we need to take them one by one and train about gender gap. I heard not so long ago that in our country, women are proven to be more efficient and more technologically savvy than men, even though engineering and IT position are usually occupied by men. But we need to think if maybe computing engineers or IT engineers, when you get your degree, you may also swear an oath, as physicians do, saying that you are not going to program, you're not going to design applications that might have an evil use. And I would like to conclude with those words. Humans should always be at the core of everything, especially at the justice domain. This is our main tool. Justice administration, we work with people that have problems, unpleasant situations, usually, with the exception of getting married or registering a child at the civil register. The rest, they are all problems or struggles or sad events. So this is a high sensitive material we're dealing with at the justice system, and that's all I wanted to say. Thank you, Thomas. I will stay with this reflection. We have a responsibility within the justice administration system to get this digital transformation that we're all developing now. We need to be leading and in those countries so that the human side, the ethical side, the fair side might become the referent in this digital transformation process. And I believe there's still a lot to do. Thank you all for being here.
Muchísimas gracias, Aitor, y a todos los
Thank you, Aitor, and all panelists that have participated at this second panel. To conclude this session, I invite Miguel Porrua, Coordinator of Data and Digital Governance of the Inter-American Development Bank, that will address you with some concluding remarks.
Bueno, buenas tardes de nuevo.
And again, and Thomas, I believe we all stay thinking about this oath. It would be not Hippocratic oath, but a computing oath, and I believe that Hippocrates, if he was here, he might agree with us. I would just convey some words by the representative of the Inter-American Development Bank in Europe, Fasia Pusterlas. He apologized for not being with us today due to health reasons, and those are her words that I will now share with you. Pandemic impacted seriously in the way the judicial system operates, especially in the compliance of the citizens' fundamental rights. On average, 84% of programmed judicial hearings couldn't take place in Latin America and the Caribbean, according to the Justice Center in the Americas, due to the challenges the public sector has found in the digitization, a valuable tool in the fight to eliminate paperwork and bureaucracy, making the handling easier and more accessible to all. In order to do so, in addition to implementing digital transformation policies, we need to strengthen institutional capacities and reinforce transparency policies with a view always focused on the citizens. Along with the digital transformation of the bid, and through this visit, we are reinforcing the strategic objectives linked to the strengthening the good governance, institutional capacities, and rule of law, with a special focus on the opportunities to develop digital economy. This week will give the participants a huge opportunity to exchange knowledge, to learn from success stories and drawbacks, and to access the best digital transformation practices in the justice system that today Spain and the Ministry of Justice makes available to its population and to all of you. We could hear how the Latin American and Caribbean countries have highlighted the role of digitization as a catalyst for judicial efficiency, but also the presence of main challenges in the different public administrations that offer to the public an access to justice. The good news is that Latin American and Caribbean countries have the support of a committed partner, that is the Inter-American Development Bank. Especially this collaboration between the BID and the Ministry of Justice in Spain offers many opportunities to attain an agile, interconnected, and sustainable digital justice system in the region. In order to guarantee those commitments, we need to actively work with the region, training expert people in digital justice in Latin America and the Caribbean. The support through exchanges for the design and implementation of digital justice initiatives, and the access and upgrading of digital solutions that are successfully being the case in Spain. I would like to highlight, in addition to the support by the Ministry of Justice, the support by the Ministry of Economic Affairs and Digital Transformation for their financial contributions to promote the design and implementation of digital transformation initiatives and policies. Many of what you will see this week will be important for the construction of a more resilient region that will be better prepared to face digital transformation challenges in order to provide a better service and guarantee fundamental rights and the well-being of the citizens. Before concluding, I would like to thank the Spanish Ministry of Justice, a committed partner working with the Latin American and the Caribbean countries. This week, we realized one of the main objectives agreed on November 2021 through the MOE between the Inter-American Development Bank and the Spanish Ministry of Justice. I would like to highlight that this mission has the financial support from the General Fund of the Spanish Cooperation by the Ministry of Economic Affairs and Digital Transformation. Through technical cooperation resources, 2 projects are being implemented in the area of digital transformation of justice system. One focused on the analysis of digital justice in Latin America and the Caribbean through diagnosis and roadmaps for digital transformation in 5 countries of the region. And then there's a second project for the exchange of experience with the Spanish Ministry of Justice that is making possible the present visit. These projects guarantee a committed and active work that will face the main challenges of the region's digital transformation. I would like to thank Casa de America for welcoming us so warmly, welcoming the whole delegation, for being always a valuable partner to the bank. I would like to thank delegations of Brazil, Jamaica, and Bolivia for coming to Spain to share their knowledge with us. I hope that we will continue as fruitful as today. I hope you have a good evening, and thank you very much for your attention.